You are listening to the Novel Writing Podcast, episode 223. I'm your host, Colleen Mitchell. Grab a cup, cozy up, and let's get to writing. Today I'm talking with Phil Marshall, the founder and CEO of Spoken, the AI audiobook company, and author of the hard science fiction novel Taming the Perilous Skies. Phil is a technologist, entrepreneur, storyteller, and former medical doctor with a deep interest in AI and amplifying the voices of independent authors. Phil, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here with you, Colleen.
Let's just dive in and have you tell us a little bit more about you, about Spoken Press, and how you got into the narration space.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, my background was in healthcare, and but then I switched to tech 3,000 years ago, it seems, and I founded a company called Conversa, which became the top conversational AI company in healthcare, and sold that in 2021. And I had already started my process of writing my debut novel, Taming the Perilous Skies, which actually germinated from a theory in gravitational physics that I had come up with many years earlier in 2001, actually on 9/11 on a flight that landed on the East Coast between when the first tower and second tower were hit. That's where the idea actually came to me. Pretty easy day to remember. And so since then, I, thought deeply about the implications about our universe, how it works. And so when we sold Conversa and I switched full time to finishing the novel, several things sort of collided in at once. I went to some really formative workshops in speculative fiction. And one of those was Tao's Toolbox with Nancy Kress and Walter John Williams. Met some incredible people who really motivated me to be excited about multi-character works and the technology that was really transforming audio, AI tech. And so it all kind of collided in again, entrepreneurial spirit and me being an audio only reader and me writing character-driven stories, all with different voices and accents. For whatever reason, when I think of characters, I hear them, and they all are distinct. They all have interesting voices. They all have different accents. And so because that's how I hear story and that's how I write stories, and I am an AI technologist, it's like, hold on, I think I can do this really well. And it turns out I found some people to go along for the ride here. We've got a great team, and we built a great product, and we're delivering great multicast audiobooks.
So I first heard about you guys at Author Nation last year. I'm friends with Greg Keogh, and I personally found it hilarious. So for anybody who wasn't at Author Nation last year, during the expo on the first day, they had Spoken Press, and then they had the human narrators only. I think it was Flock. And then on the end of that little section was Curious. And so I went to go see Greg. And my whole point about going to Author Nation last year was finding an audio solution. He's like, well, you should go talk to the guys down at Spoken. I just found it hilarious. They stuck you right next to the human narrators only. I feel like that caused some sparks to fly.
Not
That
for us. We have a great deal of respect for the human narrator, crowd, and for Taming the Perilous Skies, I hired a male and a female pair of human narrators to do my Audible version.
Oh,
And
okay.
so yeah. So we're generally very, very friendly, and sometimes we hit some bristles.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, I wasn't the only person who noticed that at Author Nation. We just thought it was hilarious.
yeah,
Um,
it is kind of funny, actually.
But you mentioned you're an audio only listener, and that's, I think, becoming quite common for a lot of people. And audiobooks are just exploding right now, but unfortunately, the cost of narration can be astronomical. So for indies like me who can't drop like $4,000 on an audiobook, how does Spoken compare in terms of pricing?
Yeah, so you're right. It is very expensive, and especially when you consider some of those trends like full cast, that then all of a sudden it's like, well, no, I can't even have that conversation. I get that's not on the table because it's not for anybody except for your biggest publishers with the deepest pockets. And so yeah, cost is an important consideration. What's funny about it is ever since we've gone to what we call magic mode in this V2 and continue to improve it every single day, we are actually emerging out of the cost argument and into the immersive and quality argument of multicast. However, to get to your question, what is the pricing? The street pricing for spoken is that it's free to use and you only pay when perfect. And so when you're ready to publish and you've listened to your work, you've proofed it, you know that it's right as rain, you've got it all. I don't care how many voices you used. I have 100 speaking characters in my book. So, so if you've got that or more, don't worry, you're in good company. And but that doesn't matter to us. What matters to us is just word count and are you happy with it? And at that point, it's $20 per every 5,000 words. That's the regular price. We have not yet put a price on Magic Mode because we're still refining it. It's still in preview, but that is going to be a more expensive venture. But still, even at whatever twice the price or whatever we end up deciding, it's still going to be a fraction because a 100,000 word work right now at most is going to be $400, $200 if you have the $50 monthly subscription that gives you half off that. So even if it were, much more than that, it's less than $1,000 total for 100,000 word work. And if that has 100 speaking characters that are just flawlessly woven in together, you've got a compelling, vivid, and engaging bit of work there. And that would have never been before possible.
For sure. So for people who don't actually know what it usually costs for human narration, what I was seeing for price ranges at Author Nation last year was anywhere from like $300 to $500 per finished audio hour, which when you have a lot of words adds up. So just the fact that this new magic mode can do the what I think it's the one click narration for this entire full cast book, that's incredible to have it like less than $1,000 for 100,000 words.
Yeah, that's right. So 300 and 500 is a little bit more of the premium edge, I would say. 250 is sort of the minimum SAG-AFTRA
Okay.
rate, but still, it's going to be at least 250 per finished hour. And for those of your listeners who don't know, the way to calculate it is that if you have, X number of thousands of words, it's just a little bit more of that in hours. So, for example, if it's 100,000 word work, it's going to be somewhere like 11 and a half hours. Okay. So, that there's some decimals that you move, but generally, that's about that. If it's 50,000 words, that's going to be maybe around 6 hours. Mine's 125,000 and it's 14 hours. So that gives you a rough sense for things. But we don't care about hours. If you want it brisk, then make it brisk. If you want it leisurely and you want it, you said, with a southern drawl, and that ends up being 18 hours, what otherwise would have been 9. We do not care, darling. We do not care. It's word count that we care about. It's word count.
Which makes a good point for the comparison between word count and finished hour. It's like, yes, you could have an audiobook just speed run. I usually talk very fast. And so if I narrated my own books, it would just be really, really, really quick. But I did like in the Magic Mode preview, which I'm testing right now, that you can pick leisurely, regular, or brisk for your narration style, which is cool.
Yeah, what we do is we layer. Magic Mode is just a complete transformation of the entire process. The biggest challenge with multicast is cohesion across the scene to make sure that the spoken dialogue versus the dialogue tags or the exposition, that those are all woven in together. That these passages aren't simply clips that are standing on their own. They get generated, regenerated, regenerated, and they don't have any context around them. And so what we did in Magic Mode is we layer it up through different layers. So there's rudimentary things like what language is it, what style, what genre, and then there's cadence, and accents have an enormous are an enormous factor on cadence, and so we have you pick some of your key accents like narrator accents, and if that differs by chapter, you can change it by chapter, but tell us that up front so we can weave some of that into those underlying layers because that becomes very important. And then your character voices are over the top of that. Your character timbre is over the top of that. But their actual accents that they use are pretty fundamental. And we're still honing this. We're still fine tuning it. And here over I'm going to guess that somewhere over the next 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to be going to what's called GA or general availability for Magic Mode, which means we're going to start charging for it. We're going to be, it's going to be out of preview. But this issue of the accents and making sure that every accent of every character is perfectly preserved and it's not washed out at all for the sake of narrative cohesion, that's all going to be great. And so we expect to be there. We're pretty close on that, depending on the main narrator of a given chapter. Sometimes those accents get washed out from time to time right now. And we do a lot of gymnastics to make sure they don't, but they still do. And sometimes, but all in all, really by and large, that it carries them through pretty well. But by the time this goes out of preview and we start charging for it, we'll have that one. We'll have that one nailed.
I do have that issue with the accents washing out a little bit, so I'm working with your help team on it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It does happen. I've got half of my chapters are narrated by somebody with an African American accent in first POV, and then the others are third POV, independent American, like no accent at all. And so, sometimes those underlying layers, depending on the first POV. You know what's funny? I've got a little story here. So Nancy Kress, one of the kingpins of speculative fiction craft. I mean, she is the queen of craft, period. When I did Taos Toolbox with her, we were there with each other for 2 weeks, and and she said, why are your Jack POV chapters in first? And I said, because I had a real problem getting close to Jack. Like I had a real problem with the reader and the prose having a closeness to Jack, which I don't seem to have with the other characters. And he's my main guy, right? I mean, he can't just be protagonist syndrome, just kind of furthering the plot, right? Like, like here's your next dish, sir. And he has to, we have to get really close to him. And so I made it first POV. And I had I not done that, and I kept Jack as third, as Nancy Kress had advised me to do, and I rejected, I actually wouldn't have any of the problems of the other characters' accents washing out. And I know why that is because I designed the system and I know why it's happening. And I also know how to fix it. We just need some time to get there to do it. I'm sorry for your listeners that you had to listen to all that. But anyway, what you should know about all that is that I'm experiencing it with you. I'm there in the trenches with you. I know what you're after, right? I feel you. I hear you. We're going to be the ones to wrestle it to the ground. The promise of the one click multicast audiobook with perfect cohesion and delivery and exchange and handoffs character to character to character, we are the ones for that, and we are the ones to deliver that. So just if it's not exactly right now, it sure will be soon. But it's pretty darn. I've been pretty happy with it. The number of times that I've narrated Taming the Perilous Skies from scratch on the platform, um, I can't. I'm not going to say. That'd be embarrassing.
Well, for people who wouldn't want to pay the extra for Magic Mode, is the regular version of Spoken going to still be available?
Oh yeah, yeah. We call it manual mode,
Manual
and
mode. Okay.
and so it's very possible that you'll need a special subscription to gain access to Magic Mode at all, because it's I mean, there's a lot of expensive stuff happening under there, and so we're going to have to gate it once we get it locked down. We're going to have to gate it a little bit to make sure that people that are serious about delivering multicast are the ones that are using it, and so manual mode will always be there. I think it will probably serve as a reminder to you why we have Magic Mode and why your subscription to Magic Mode matters. But in any case, yeah, yes, it will be.
So with your cast of a hundred, or is it more than 100 speaking characters, that some people are going to hear that and think there's no way AI generated voices can pull off that kind of cohesion. So what do you say to the listeners who are skeptical that AI generated voices or even the clones of human narrators can perform on par with human narrators?
Oh my gosh. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what. I'm going to ask you said this is coming out like right quick, right? And so I'm going to ask your listeners for a little bit of patience. Not much patience. And that answer is going to be brought to you in stark relief and very soon. So stay tuned. Keep your finger on the pulse of news in the industry, and we will have answered that question. But I will summarize the main point by saying that you can feel confident that in fact it is able to deliver, and with as little effort as humanly imaginable. Our goal is no effort at all, no edits needed whatsoever. One click, true, one click, perfect cohesion, perfect inflection, And what we would rather our author users and publisher partners to focus on is the voices and making sure that those voices that they choose are just right, and that the pronunciations of certain words that they need to, make sure are just right, are correct. And that's why we have a workflow the way we do. We go from project manager, which is just your basic attributes, your uploads, your metadata, and then your lexicon, which are the words that we identified that might have uncertain pronunciation. You can add others if you want. And then once listen to a sample of those, if they are wrong, you can put in the phonetic replacement and we'll cover it across the entire work. And then you can carry that lexicon forward into your subsequent works if they're using the same phrases. And then third, and sort of the centerpiece, like literally the centerpiece of the 5-step process, is voices. And we will be happy to generate a custom voice for every speaking character. We will develop the prompt. We will surface that. And if you want to go back and change it, find others, we'll give them 3 samples at a time. Or you can choose from the voice actor library. We have a new character list, which has just a nice array of different characters to choose from. Or you can even use your own personal voice by reading a script in, and you can then use that for your work, whether it's for the villain like I do from my voice, or for memoirs or nonfiction. And so every voice, you have those choices of categories, but we will surface the ones that we think, based on how you wrote the character, are right for you. In fact, we will auto generate all those custom voices for you so that you can just go down, listen, 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 change the ones that you feel that you need to change. And then boom, when you click make spoken at the bottom of that tab, that part of the process, which is the third tab, when you click make spoken, that's it. Boom, you're off to the races. We do everything at that point, build up all the layers, do the character voices, what I call a coat of paint over it for each of those characters, and weave it together with great inflection. And then finally, after you're able to proof it, listen to it, make sure it's all right, are any passages wrong, you can easily correct those by making them text to speech mode or speak it, where you can actually speak into the microphone of your computer or your phone, and we'll carry that through and deliver that in the character voice just as you want it. And then the final tab is publish. And there you can publish one or all of your chapters. However many you choose to finally publish is the word count that we will charge you for. And so if you want to start with 1 chapter, then 2, then 3, we'll just charge you for the ones you haven't been charged for yet. If you want to do the whole book at once, we'll charge you that. You can go back, change voices, edit, do whatever you want. You've already paid for the word count. We're not going to double charge you. You don't have to pay for any regenerations. Zero cost for regenerating any passages. That is our guarantee.
On the subject of Magic Mode generating custom voices for you, I was actually really impressed with the Magic Mode voice that was generated for one of my characters. I listened to it and I'm like, they nailed it. I was not expecting it to nail it, but it nailed it. And that was a character that I hadn't had an internal voice for yet. So when I heard it, I'm like, that's perfect.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you as a writer have described the voice quality at all, we'll leverage that. The challenge comes in when you had something in your mind, but you didn't explicitly put it in the story. Like, oh, I imagined that person was from New Zealand, but you never said that, right? So then that's something that you're going to have to add in. But yeah, it really does. What we do is we do a lot of hard work on, basically, think of it like mixing paint colors. Okay. So within any given scene, those characters that are interacting most within the scenes, it's sort of a chromatic approach to each of the voices, and that they blend well, that they mix well. And so there's a lot that goes into it, but the more that's in the story to guide the personality or the timbre or accent of the voice, we'll leverage that to help you find just the right one.
So, on the subject of AI generated versus the voice actor list, I know there's a lot of authors out there. Like, AI is such a dividing line. And you guys have done a really good job of promoting the fact that you're an ethical AI company. So, what does that mean? And what should listeners take away from the fact that there are AI generated voices being used and also the availability of human generated voices?
Yeah, yeah. So certainly, if you want voice actor voices for your works, choose those, and they'll get paid for every use. But when it comes to ethical AI, you can always look at at our ethical AI page on the website that'll explain this, but we're actually in kind of a fortunate spot in being in the text to speech, AI audio land. And here's why. The graphemes to phonemes. So you look at that string of letters, and that produced this sound, this sound in that language, this sound in that accent, this sound. There's a lot of good, deep, publicly available works that can be used for training for that without stealing voices, without doing anything untoward. Having said that, we do only work with infrastructure partners on the voice side and on the LLM side that don't take your work and train anything on it, and they don't take anybody else's voice and do it without permission. It's all permission based driven. And so we keep that list pretty high and tight based on that requirement. But like I said, we're in kind of a fortunate spot in that audio, unlike writing words, which have to be trained on somebody else's words, right? The audio world actually has a lot of above board, data to work from. And so yeah, that's very important to us.
You mentioned earlier that you hired a male and a female voice actor for the Audible version. So that kind of implies that there are some platforms out there, perhaps like Audible, that don't accept AI narrated books right now. So what is the expectation authors should have for that?
The expectation is that the world is changing quickly, and so that's the expectation. So we're working on our friends from Audible, and so Spotify for Authors wide open for you. And we're partnered with Voices by an Audio as well to apply a digital signature to the work, so they know the provenance of that work was spoken, and which helps to limit piracy. And they then become an avenue and conduit to a bunch of different endpoints that allow digital narration. I would say the majority of their endpoints now do allow digital narration. Certainly, Spotify, Apple, Google, Kobo, a whole variety of them. We have them listed all on our website. You're welcome to go to spoken.press and check that out. But if you're using Voices by an Audio, we're already, sort of baked in as a partner there. And but Spotify for Authors, I would say, is the biggest one. But as far as that other one, we are working on it.
I remember at Author Nation, Audible was like kitty corner to Curious, and so you guys could see each other from where you were sitting.
Yep. Yep. We know those folks real well. Certainly have a respect for the role they play in the market, and and the role that voice actors play in, if it was a single narrator work, I mean, using spoken for that's very easy, very straightforward, very inexpensive. But if you get a great single narrator, especially if it's nonfiction, I think human is great for that. And so yeah, I mean, it's really not about cost, though, as I said. It's really more about like really meeting the market where it is. That demand for full cast, that demand for immersive, that demand for more engaging audio is going up and up and up. And so, Harry Potter comes out with their full cast, and I can't imagine. I shudder to think what that cost.
Yeah.
But and I'm I'm sort of biased against having too many sound effects and things, and so lots of background sounds and distractions I'm not necessarily a big fan of. But regardless, the Harry Potter full cast thing sort of, furthered the challenge that authors have in meeting readers where they are. But we're there to do that. That's what we do.
I will admit that the full cast aspect is what drew me to Spoken because I cannot in good conscience do an audible version of my books without the correct accents because that has always been the thing that's been in
Yep.
my head. I'm like, I can't do it
Yep.
myself. If
I'm
I'm
there
gonna
with you.
hire people, it has to be a male and a female. They have to be able to do accents, but with this multicast availability, it's looking great.
I'm there with you. And while we do still have, with some of those underlying layers, some challenges in washing those out, like I said, trust me when I say I am there with you. I am insufferable on this issue, so you don't have to be, and I will fix that. And actually, for the most part, I'll tell you, I have about 10,000 passages in my book. What does that mean? If you divide a work like we do We analyze your work deeply, we analyze your characters deeply, and then we're ready to go multicast. We tear that thing to shreds. Well, Colleen, because you used it, but every single passage that's spoken by character versus narrator is separated out, rolled up to that character, color coded. You can see how much space or padding there is at the beginning of every one of their passages, which all follows in that arc and that cohesion and that those inflections. And so we automate all of that. And so with 10,000 passages, I probably have of those, I probably have about 6,000 to 7,000 spoken passages. And of those 7,000, I probably have 5,000 of them that have to have an accent, and the accent has to be right. And so that just reinforces that I am there with you. I am so there with you.
I mean, if there's no better place to test this on than on a 100 speaking character book.
No, there's not. In fact, I'll give you a little side story. So we have three. I've written three stories that we use for testing pretty extensively. The 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 smallest one you can see as soon as you sign up for Spoken and you go to Studio to create a work, you'll see the option there to clone a short little story. It's a 4-minute little story called Welcome to the Audioverse. And that has a young American man and a young British woman speculating as they look up at the stars, speculating about being able to change their voices to funny voices. Okay, and so that's one small test story that does really, really well. And I don't know why I think in these terms of accents and voices and all that, but I do. The story that actually was the first to go on Spoken was the one that inspired the entire journey, and that's called Kill Your Darlings. And I recently went through Kill Your Darlings using Magic Mode, and I did not have to make one change. And that has 6 characters stuck in a chalet. It's what I wrote for the second week of Taos Toolbox, and those 6 characters with those accents, an old Norwegian woman, a Russian man and his daughter, a gay American couple, the main character who feigns being British until you learn later that he's the villain and he's actually from Bakersfield, California. And so these voices, I think in terms of voices, I think in terms of accents. And so Kill Your Darlings was the very first story on Spoken. It's what inspired the entire journey of the company. And then Taming the Perilous Skies comes out, and I've got 12 different accents, at least 12 different accents. And so yeah, I guess the short version is yeah, I get it. I understand. I'm there.
You are here with us.
I am there with you.
What is the best place for listeners to go get more information about Spoken Press, or where can they reach out if they have questions?
Yeah, we're pretty easy to find. Just spoken.press, and free account, free to use, pay when perfect. Get in there, kick the tires, tell us what you hate. I probably hate it too, but maybe I didn't pick up the thing you picked up on. And it there is still right now a bit of an art to learning Spoken, because depending on your accents, what we call speaker cues for the characters, which now you can specify at a more minute detail level. We don't want you to have to specify anything, but we want you to be able to and be able to listen and correct things if they're not exactly right. And so there still is a bit of an art to Spoken, but the more you use it, the more you'll be familiar with that. And we're trying to reduce the number of steps that you have to take so that it lives up to the one-click vivid multicast promise.
I'm patiently waiting for that moment because I have 4 books I need narrated. Actually, 5. Will soon be 6 and then 7.
We'll be there for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We're going to link everything in the show notes or the show description so you guys can go and check it out.
Thanks, Colleen.
All right, everybody, that is it for today's episode. Thanks for joining us, and remember, the first draft is supposed to be garbage. The Novel Writing Podcast is a production of Colleen Mitchell Writes. For more writing resources, including Curios, Tally Inc. author surfaces, and the 60-day novel writing challenge, check out the links in the description.